Welcome to the Oh Hell No podcast, where Kay Nicole delivers a daily dose of inspiration by discussing passion, purpose, and struggle with people who are living their best life doing what they love. Here's Nicole.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today I have Dr. Adam Saenz. He is a psychologist and an author, and I'm very excited to talk to him today. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much, Nicole. I'm really excited to be with you. I appreciate the invitation.
Yes. So tell us, when did you figure out that you wanted to be a psychologist?
Golly, I think I've always known, I think, because I've always been fascinated by human behavior. Why do people do what they do? What drives us? And I think it goes all the way back to elementary school, wondering like, well, man, why does that kid want to play with me? Why does that kid not want to play with me? And then in junior high, why am I so afraid of girls? And why are those guys so confident around girls? But I really think I got serious when I was in my 20s and I was trying to figure out, kind of what I was going to be when I grew up. And I just realized I had a lot of trauma in my childhood and a lot of things that didn't go well. And honestly, I think the reason I finally went into the field was to kind of unpack my own junk, figure out what happened to me.
That's interesting. So I read a little bit that you had, rough start before you actually got into your career and things like that. So
Yeah.
How did you find yourself and get out of that space?
Well, I think that I had a lot of help getting out of the space, like physically, literally. My mom knew that things didn't look good for me when I was in junior high, and so she voluntarily relinquished parental rights, and I went to live with a family several hundred miles away. So I physically was removed from the space, the environment that wasn't good for me, and that was really helpful. The family that I lived with was they were a good family, and they loved me really well, and that alone was it. I wouldn't say it healed me, but it certainly stopped the bleeding. And then after I was in my 20s and started thinking about, again, what am I going to be when I grow up? I just knew that I had stuff to deal with. So as I started my master's program in counseling, I finally got a job and I finally had benefits and a little bit of money, and I could afford medication and therapy. And I finally got treatment, for all my past. And that was really helpful. Just the therapy process was really, really good to help me understand what I was responsible for and what I wasn't responsible for. And so I would say through therapy and again, my own study of psychology really helped me kind of figure out who I was at a core level.
That's great. I love that, because a lot of people, I don't know if it's that they don't want to get help, or they just don't know where to start, or the work seems too daunting. I don't know what it is, but I love that you kind of just went with it and just, went in the direction of, how do I figure this out, So
Yeah, I think that's a common thing is it's like if you have an ache, and it's you say, oh, that's funny, I've got an ache in my leg or something. And you think, well, it's no big deal. I'm going to kind of work through it today. And then, well, it's been around for a week, and then it gets worse and worse. And then sometimes it's like it gets so bad, then you're scared and you think, I don't want to go. What if I find out like I've got a lump or something, and then you're scared to go at that point, and then you don't know who to call and you get overwhelmed. And I think it's like that with our mental health. We endure as long as we can, and we think, I just tough it up. I'm just gonna, I'm not depressed. I'm fine. I'm good. And then once we finally acknowledge, like, God, I'm not good, man. I'm not in a good place. Then that's a great start. But then reaching out for help can be so difficult. So yeah, it's a dilemma. It really is.
yeah, it really is. So you have a PhD, and then
Hmm.
I see D, and then Min, like MIN. Can you
Yeah.
educate us on that? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a doctorate of ministry. So I've always been fascinated in spirituality. Why do people believe in a higher power? And why do they call that higher power different things? And why do they have different rituals to connect with that higher power? So after I got my PhD in psychology, I went back to school and got a doctorate of ministry in pastoral counseling. Um, just to understand how can we use for people who believe in a higher power in whatever form, how can I help them access that belief system to find spiritual and emotional well-being?
I love
Mm.
spirituality. I believe in God, of course. I mean,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
I always love how, things unfold in life and how things happen. Like that's why I love listening to people's, life stories and how they found their passions and got on the right track and how things just, came together so that they could be doing what they're doing. So that stuff fascinates me.
That's great.
So, as a psychologist, what do you do in your day to day? Like,
Uh, well, I do a lot of things. So just today, for example, I spent the morning interviewing adults who have mental illness and who have applied for disability income because of their mental illness. And it could be anything from I just feel a little sad because I can't work anymore, to something so severe as I see things that other people don't see and I hear things that other people don't hear and I'm afraid to get out of my bed. Severe pathology. So I did that today, and then this morning, and then this afternoon, I was on the phone with some school districts because we're getting ready for back to school, and I do a lot of professional development with educators, teaching them how to take care of themselves and how to build good relationships with students, so that they can be sustainable and have the best outcomes. So that's another, and I'll be real busy with that for the next 2 weeks. And then tomorrow I'll be at the university at Texas A&M on campus working with some athletes there. I'm a coach as well, and I practice sports psychology with athletes. So it's just a lot of different things. I think, looking back, I don't know whether I was more depressed or anxious or if I had ADHD or some combination of all of that, but I've always been the kind of person that needs a lot of irons in the fire. So being a psychologist is great because it gives me a chance to do so many different things, and I just love it.
yeah, that's great. I love when people love what they're doing. It's like,
Mm.
got to be the best feeling to wake up every day, feeling like focused and happy. Because I do know people who dread going to work every day.
Yeah, and I've been there. I've had jobs that were just jobs, and it was just, I just needed a paycheck. And I'm so grateful that, like, when I go on vacation, I don't like to be. It's hard for me to be gone for more than 5 days because I miss what I do. I want to get back in the game. I just love it so much.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really amazing.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I mean, I just
No,
like it's
it's
like pinch me,
great.
man. I think, am I really living this life?
No, I think that's where we all want to get to, a place where
Mm,
work is fun and you just feel good about what you're doing and you want to be there, so that
yeah,
it doesn't feel so, like, oh God, I have to go to this place. I hate it. I'm just doing it
yeah.
for this paycheck. It's the worst feeling.
It is, and I'm really fortunate as a mental health provider because not every vocation, do you hear somebody say, "My work with you changed my life," and when somebody says that, it's just like, goodness gracious, man, I'm so blessed that I get to do what I do, like what an honor to be able to step into like the most sacred places of people's lives and them honor you to ask for help. I mean, it's pretty sobering. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So,
Hmm.
do you ever get nervous or feel like unsafe? Like if you have a patient that might have some mental illness or anything like that, have you ever felt that in your career, like even starting out?
No, I haven't because you can tell, like you learn to read people's energy is a way to put it when they
Mm-hmm.
walk in the door, and if they seem kind of skittish or then you don't dig real deep. You keep it real superficial, and you keep them so they feel safe and they feel calm, and so you don't do a lot of digging and pressing and probing and asking hard, difficult questions because you know that they can't tolerate that. It's sort of like when a patient comes into the emergency room and they're on life support, the doctor knows, like, I can't do a whole lot here because they're so fragile right now. So let me just stabilize them. And then once they're stable, then if I need to go and dig around and fix what I need to fix, I'll do that then. But now's not the time. And so, yeah, when they come in and they're really highly agitated, and I know that they've got maybe a history of violence or aggression or anything like that, then we'll spend hours and hours and hours just letting them feel safe in the room with me. So yeah, I've never really, like I've there have been times where I've worked with patients who were psychotic, and they say, well, my friend is a demon, and he's here in the room with me, and he's standing right behind you, and he says he's about to kill you. I'm really worried for you. Mm-hmm. And you kind of do a gut check and think, man, I hope that's a delusion, because I don't want to go out in a therapy session with my throat cut, and
yeah.
you kind of say, well, it's a delusion. I think I'm safe, So, but I will confess that I sit with my back to the wall a lot. So
yeah. Oh my gosh,
but
that's
no,
so scary.
I've never really felt truly threatened.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. So you have written a book. It's not out yet, right? It's coming out soon.
That's right.
And it's called The EQ Intervention: Shaping a Self-Aware Generation. Tell us, what inspired you to write this book?
Man, I'm so excited about this book. I really am. This is my third book, and I didn't say that about all of them. Like I was excited to write the first one, and the second one was like, yeah, it's all right. But this one I'm really excited about, because what inspired me to write it is I just realized that EQ, the EQ intervention, EQ stands for emotional quotient, kind of like IQ, which is our intellectual quotient. EQ is our emotional quotient, which means how well do we do emotion? Like, can we recognize it? And once we recognize it, do we know what to do with it? And then can we recognize emotion in other people? That's called empathy. And then can we connect with other people? And that's called interpersonal skills. And those four things are the essence of EQ. And, just after years and years of practicing as a psychologist in my clinic and schools, and I just realized that, this is what we need. We need emotional intelligence, And so this particular book is targeted to educators. And in the book, I talk about how educators can use emotional intelligence to make themselves more resistant to stress, more resilient, more able to do good work for longer periods of time, more sustainable. And not only do they become better and more resilient as individuals, but they're more equipped then to build good relationships with their colleagues and with students. So that's essentially what the book is about. It's about how do I apply emotional intelligence in my life so that I can find the best version of me, that I can find my peak performance no matter what I'm doing professionally.
That's great. I really think that they should have like a class about this very thing that starts as early as like elementary school for kids, to really teach them what self-awareness, emotional, quotient, intellectual, quotient, stress management, all of these things. Because my daughter, she's in the 4th grade. She's going to 5th grade in September. And the stuff that she tells me that goes on at school, it's like shocking. The way these kids talk, they're cursing all the time. They're so rude and abrasive and just, confrontational. And I'm like, where is all of this coming from? Like, they're only in 4th grade. They don't have to work every day. They don't have to put food on the table at night. They're not doing laundry. Like, where is this stress coming from?
Yeah, it's amazing, and the thing about it is that, so we have a new normal in school, and the new normal is what you just described. It's more volatile, it's more uncertain, it's more ambiguous, and it's more complex, and kids are just overwhelmed. And, the challenge is that the tools that we've given teachers traditionally to manage that have been like what we call in psychology, carrots and sticks, right? So let me give you a carrot and try to motivate you, and let me give you a stick and try to punish you, and that will help you be successful. And carrots are things like, let me give you special attention, let me give you verbal praise. And those things are sort of helpful. And then the sticks are things like, I'm going to send you to the office, we're going to expel you. But what we're finding is that carrots and sticks, they just don't work anymore in the new reality. And what we're finding is that what does work is emotional intelligence, is when kids are taught, as you said, from a very young age, to learn to identify their emotions and to learn to express them appropriately, then they don't have to resort to violence. So I'm totally down with you. Like sign up all of our kids for this. And what's really exciting too is that our clinical group, we've created a curriculum, a social and emotional learning curriculum for K through 5. And this is something that our teachers can do in their classrooms to formally train students to understand their emotions and what to do with them and how to be empathetic with their friends, and social skills, how to connect with their skills. And so I think people are finally in schools certainly are beginning to understand, like, oh, we need to come about this in a different way, because this old school stuff about expelling kids, man, that's just not working anymore.
Yeah, it's really a serious issue. So,
Hmm.
give us some tips, like for just a basic thing that you could share with parents about emotional self awareness, like what they can do to kind of start to identify that and figure out a way to help teach their children about that. Or some of them need it too, you know.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, absolutely. And the research is really, really clear, and that is that when we teach children emotional intelligence, it's got to start with the adult. And when you think about it, I mean, are you going to want to try to learn trigonometry from somebody that can't balance their checkbook? Of
Mm,
course not, right? Like, if you can't do that basic math, don't think you're going to teach me how to balance equations, right? And the same thing is true with emotional intelligence. When if I, as a parent, am telling my child at home, you need to follow directions, you need to act appropriately, and then I turn around and act every kind of fool in front of my kid, do you think they're really going to listen to follow my direction? Well, they will follow my direction. What I'm modeling for them is emotional unintelligence.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's got to start with the parents. It really, really does. It's definitely one of those things where they're gonna respond to you. You're teaching them one way or the other, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
teach them the good thing. So just a practical tip would be, what I tell parents all the time is, think about your feelings when how does it feel to parent your child, and be honest with yourself. Be willing to say, man, sometimes it sucks to parent my kid. Sometimes I get so mad at my kid, I want to wring his neck. Sometimes I'm sad because I wish I had more to offer my kid, but I don't. And I tell parents, hey man, it's those feelings are fine. You just own that and be okay with it, and accept it, and just you be good with where you're at. It's okay to feel those things. So step one is just recognize the feeling. Step two is just embrace it and own it. Don't be ashamed of it. And then step three is link it with a behavior, right? Because emotion is fuel. That's all that is. It's just fuel. And so I always ask parents, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling angry, how can you think of that as fuel that will drive you to the best parenting version of yourself? So if you're angry, it's okay to be angry. Well, just tell your child, hey, I'm angry right now. I'm going to go take some breaths, and I'll come right back, and we'll finish this conversation. And that's amazing, because you're modeling to your child, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to admit that you're angry, and there's a way to deal with it that makes our life better. So that's one
Absolutely.
thing, is just own your feelings, be comfortable with all your feelings, link them with a behavior, and make that behavior a behavior that brings out the best version of you.
Yeah, I like that. So,
Mm.
how can we know others? I always tell my daughter this, and I keep using her as an example because this
Yeah.
stuff just really resonates with me and the
Mm.
conversations that I've been having with my daughter. So, we went to a barbecue this weekend, and she's playing with a bunch of kids, and then one kid has a water gun pointed directly at her eye. And I don't know
Mm.
how it got that close. And she stands there and allows the kid to spray water directly in her eye with the force of this
Oh
water gun. Yeah.
no.
And then she starts screaming and gets crazy because, oh my God, my eye. And then my husband is like, go sit down and don't move for the rest of the day. Because she just doesn't, like, when something happens to her, she just gets out of control. But I said, you have to anticipate people's behavior sometimes. You have to know that, okay, she's pointing this at me. It's getting too close to my face. How do I stop this? What do I do? So how can we, like, teach our children, and even for adults, because these, like you said, it starts with us. So how can we be more aware of who we're around and, who we're working with, who we're in the stores with? Just a basic tip.
Yeah. Well, what you're describing is about safety and boundaries. And so one of the questions I hear you asking in that is, how do we help our children understand when they're not safe? And then when they figure that out, what should they do? So I would say, like in the situation with your daughter, is practice having conversations about what it means to be safe, and about your body and how you own your body and you get to protect it and you decide how it gets treated. And so that means that if somebody points a gun at your eye, even if it's a water gun, and you think you could get hurt, you have the power to say, no, I don't want my body to be treated that way. And then you walk away, or you say, please don't do that. And if they don't honor you, then you go find an adult. That's the setting the boundary part. So the first part is just training our children to understand that they own their bodies. They can protect their bodies. It's their right to protect their body. And when they feel afraid or threatened, then and they don't know what to do, then an adult can help them feel safe to go find an adult. So that's it in a nutshell. Now that's a conversation that has to happen over and over and over and over again, and practice and practice and practice and practice. And as crazy as this sounds, there's a time and a place to even encourage your kids to talk to strangers. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say you're at the mall or you're at the grocery store and you're with your kid and you say, your daughter, and you say, hey, listen, tell me your daughter's name.
Hallie.
So I would say, hey, Hallie, listen, I want you to go over there and see that man over there. Go ask him what time it is. And then I'm going to keep my eye on you, but just step over there and ask him and come right back to me. Right. And she'll go over and say, sir, what time is it? And he'll say, I don't know. He may say it's 10 o'clock, or he'll say, I don't know, kid, get out of here. And then she comes right back to you. And then you sit down and say, Hallie, how did that feel? Like, did that man feel safe to you, or did he feel scary to you? And the crazy thing about it, man, is kids, they have like a radar for adults. They can still feel energy like no other, and say, well, that thing inside of you, Hallie, hey, you trust that. And when you're with an adult and something feels weird, you honor that because that thing is real, right? And you come get me. So have them practice in vivo going up to strangers so that they're with you present, so that they understand what that roadmap feels like, and they can learn to trust their intuition, and they can learn to know when to keep themselves safe. And the same thing with kids. Like, go to that kid and ask them what day it is, or ask them where they go to school. And then when they come back and say, how did that kid feel to you? Did he feel safe? Did he feel mean? Did he feel angry? And again, this is just how you're kind of training them and teaching them to understand their emotions and their intuition and how to honor that.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's great advice, because I've been trying to just tell her, hey, you have to listen to, your inner voice, and you have to pick up on energy. I'm very big on energy. So I love that you talk about that, because I feel like I just vibe off of energy. If your energy's funky, I'm out of here. So I want her.
That's great.
I want her to pick up on that, but
and I think almost all kids are born with that. I just think we train them out of it. Just the reality of the world. We teach them to stifle emotion, to stifle intuition, and we just don't value it as a society. And it's really, really unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely is. So regulating ourselves, like, okay, a lot of adults need this. So I think this is a great chapter in your book. And people, these are all things that will be in this book that comes out soon. And we'll be sure to tell you when, or give you some ideas at the end of the podcast.
For
Um,
sure.
but yeah, how can we regulate ourselves? So tell us a little bit about that chapter and,
Mhm.
what people can expect to learn from that.
Yeah, there are three things that we need to identify and regulate, and I call them our climate, our weather, and our storms. So climate is pretty stable. So I'm in Texas, and it's pretty much hot here, right? I mean that's who we are as a state. Yes, every now and then we'll get snow, but for the most part, it's going to be hot, even in February, and that's pretty stable. The weather will change though. Like we might have a thunderstorm, or we might have a cold front come through, and we might have a dip in the temperature, and that can fluctuate from day to day. And then the storms are like, oh no, there's a funnel cloud on the horizon, or oh no, there's hail coming. Those are things like you need to really get ready for, and they're like anomalies. So the equivalent with our person is my climate is my personality. That's going to be pretty stable. And we all have a personality type, and there are strengths and weaknesses associated with that. So the first thing I need to regulate is my climate. I need to know, based on my personality, what am I going to be good at, and what are going to be my weaknesses. And most people say, well, I'm really good at that. Great. But I'm not good at that. Well, sorry, I'm just not good at that. But that's not responsible. Responsibility says, I'm not good at that. Now I need to minimize my blind spots because I want peak performance. I want the best version of me. So in the chapter about self-regulation, I talk about your personality type. Good for you for the things that you're good at, but for the things you're weak at, the best version of you comes when you address the weaknesses, when you own them, and when you mitigate them. So that's one thing to know and regulate is our climate, which is our personality. The second thing is the weather, and that's our emotions, and those can change from day to day. Even if we have a stable personality, the emotions, you get cut off in traffic, you get a bouquet of flowers from your spouse, you find out that somebody just went to the hospital. That can change pretty quickly. And that's so the weather can change. And that's another thing we need to learn to regulate is when I feel it's okay to feel anxious or afraid or angry, but is it okay to make an obscene gesture with my middle finger on the highway? No, I need to regulate that. And I can't just use the excuse, well, he pissed me off, right? It doesn't work that way. I've got to own my emotions and harness the energy in a way that draws out the best behavior in me, not the worst behavior in me. So that's the second thing. So number one, again, is climate, and that's our personality. Number two is weather, and that's our emotions. And number three is storms, and that's our stress. And that's like, I got a big project at work coming up. I need to deal with it. I'm freaked out. I'm scared. Or I've got a doctor's appointment. I felt a lump. I have no idea. It could be cancer. I don't know what to think about that. I've got bills due. I'm stressed about that. I know I'm not going to be able to make a light bill this month. Those are all storms, and that's another thing we have to learn to regulate our stress. And stress is basically fear at its core level. And if you've ever had a psychology course, you know that psychology 101, when we're afraid, it's fight or flight. And so what we need to learn to regulate in our storms, in our stress, is how do I fight in ways that make my life better, and how do I run in ways that make my life better, instead of how do I fight in ways that make my life worse, and how do I run in ways that make my life worse. So that whole chapter on self-regulation is about knowing your climate, knowing your weather, and knowing your storms, and then having a plan in place so that you're minimizing the potential negative and maximizing the potential good.
Yes, good stuff. So, yeah, I really love this stuff. It's like, because I'm
Awesome.
always working on becoming a better me. So, this just feeds my soul. And I hope that it's
Good for you, man.
helping others as well. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it feeds my soul to know that it's feeding your soul. So that it's a win-win, man. I love it.
Yes. So, how can we engage well with others? So, this is a big thing because sometimes other people are not where you are.
Hmm.
They might not have gotten to that, self awareness place, and they might just be angry all the time or,
Yeah.
negative. So, how do we engage with people and still keep our self, accountable and intact?
Yeah. Well, I think that the first thing is to this took me a lifetime to figure out. Um, just recognize that different people, like you said, are going to be able to give you different returns, Like I think about some of my family relationships, and I have some family members that I know they can give me everything they have, and it's going to feel like a little thimble to me. And then I have other friends that I love dearly, and they're just as vessels, as containers. They're so rich, man, and they're so deep, and they're so working on their lives that you spend 10 minutes with them and you feel like you've been, just marinating in love, like this incredible richness, and it was nothing to them. So I think the first thing is just recognize that different people have different capacities. And if we expect everybody to deliver the capacity that we want, we're setting them up for failure, and we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. And it's just not fair to either. So that's the first thing, I guess, is maybe just have appropriate expectations. And then the next thing is press in to get to know them, and make sure that that you are really asking good questions all the time to get to know them. So I would say those things. Number one, just have realistic expectations when you reach out to somebody, and don't expect them to be something they can't be. And then number two, always initiate by asking good questions. Who, what, how, when, where, versus yes or no questions. But questions are really the bridge builder. That's really, instead of just saying, I want to talk to you about the new car that I bought or about this program I watch, questions draw other people in, and the best questions are not the yes and no questions. The best questions are open-ended questions that make people think and reflect. And so I would say those two things they go a long way.
Yeah, I love that. Don't expect them to be who they can't be. I love
Yeah,
that.
and I mean, I just, because I didn't grow up with a family, and for years I expected my mom to be somebody that she just couldn't be, and I was always angry at her for it, and she was always disappointing me. And finally, I just said, you know what? You have permission to be you. You may never be the mom that I wanted, and I need to grieve that and get over it and stop blaming you. So you just be who you're going to be, and let's see if we can just have some kind of a friendship, and that's okay. I'm just going to trust that the Lord God, the universe knows what I need, and if I need motherly attention, it will come from somewhere, and it may not be from you, the woman that gave birth to me, but that's fine. That's fine. As long as I get it from somewhere, I will give thanks for it. And it wasn't until I learned to let people off the hook like that, and I'm not good at that. I still bring my expectations in ways that aren't always helpful, but it wasn't until I learned to let just people be who they are that I was, beginning to find some freedom.
Yes, that is so true. I struggle
Mm,
with that because I
mm,
have, you just have expectations, especially
yeah,
if you're putting in, you expect to receive what you put in. And sometimes
yeah,
with relationships, people just can't be who you are.
yeah,
So you gotta like just learn to
yeah.
say, okay, I accept them for who they are, what they bring, and that's it.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, like, I coach track and field, and you have athletes, and you put your athletes through the same workout. You have all your sprinters do the same workout over the course of the season. And some athletes with that workout, man, their times are gonna drop, and you're gonna see improvements. And other athletes, they're gonna work just as hard, and they're gonna do exactly the same workouts. They're just not gonna get the results. And it's not. It's just they're just different bodies, and they're gonna respond differently. And I think that's true, in terms of how we relate with one another. Some people, they again, they just have different, more limited capacities, and it doesn't really help anything when we get mad about it, or we blame them, or whatever it might be.
Right. Doesn't change anything. So I
It really
love
does.
it.
And I think the marriage relationship is one exception to that, because I think it's reasonable to have it's necessary to have a certain set of expectations. And when a spouse doesn't meet sort of these minimum daily requirement of expectations, then it's definitely fair to say, no, listen, man, we signed up for this thing together, and we agreed that we would do X, Y, and Z. And I know we all go through slumps, but this is what's been going on for years. I really, really need you to show effort here, or I need to see change. And if not, let's go to a marriage therapist. I mean, I think that's totally legitimate. But outside of a marriage relationship, then I think we just need to have a lot more grace,
Yeah, that is so true. Wow.
Mm.
So, I saw this in the book. I love it. Resolving conflict appropriately actually deepens intimacy and strengthens relationships.
Yep.
How?
Well, the quickest and maybe the crudest example I can think of is if you've ever had makeup sex. I've
Mm-hmm.
been married for 24 years, and some of the best physical intimacy we have is after we've had a rip-roaring fight and we've resolved it, and it's like because there's a sense of relief, like, oh, it's so good that we're not mad at each other anymore. I'm
Right.
so happy that we resolved this. Let's celebrate, right?
Yep.
And that's in a physical way, but the same thing is true in an emotional. When you've had somebody you care about deeply, or somebody you're getting to know, and you've had conflict, and you can work through the conflict. There's a sense of, at the end of it, of celebration, like, man, we did it. We did exactly what we're supposed to do, and thank you for your work. And then you value each other. You feel more deeply bonded because you've done a piece of work together. So conflict can definitely harm relationships when it's not handled appropriately. But when you triage and handle conflict correctly, you forge some of the strongest, most powerful relationships. And it's like your body. Your body is not well because there's no illness in it. Your body is well when it's able to fight illness. So you want to be exposed to illness so that your immune system will get strong. And the same is true in a relationship. A strong relationship has to have conflict, because conflict is like a germ. And when you learn to overcome conflict, it's like you're building your immune system, and the relationship becomes stronger. Some of the weakest relationships are relationships that have never had conflict,
Mm.
which is why when you're dating, you want to make dang sure that you've had some good conflict before you make a commitment. Because, if you get married right away and you don't really know that person, if you never really had to struggle and suffer together, then once it happens in marriage, you won't have the capacity to do it. You won't have a strong relationship.
Yeah, that is so true. Mm.
Mm.
Wow. So
Yeah.
this is the Oh Hell No podcast, right? And I
Yeah.
always ask my guests to share an Oh Hell No moment that they've had throughout their journey that has taught them something or changed their perspective on something. So,
Okay. So define for me what or give me an example of what an oh hell no moment might be like.
okay, so a very basic Oh Hell No moment could be, oh, I came into work this morning and I was busy doing a million things, and my boss walked up to me and said, "Can you get me some coffee?" And I thought to myself, "Oh hell no, I'm busy."
Oh hell no!
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you. It's so profound for me. It's not even. I wouldn't even call it an oh hell no. I would call it an oh hell to the no moment. Like, it was punctuated. Oh hell no! It was oh hell to the no. And I didn't even have this, sadly, until I'm 53, I think, and I didn't even have this moment until I was well into middle adulthood, when I realized that I had accepted a lie about who I was. I'm not
Mm.
good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm too Mexican. I'm too poor. I'm too brown. I'm not handsome enough. I'm not rich enough to do all the things I want. And finally I said, man, oh, hell to the no. I will not live that narrative anymore, man. I'm not going to own that anymore. And man, I shut it off, and I said, I'm good, man. I'm good with my brown skin. I'm good with my poor family. I'm good with my dysfunction. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not saying I want to wallow in dysfunction. I want to be the best version, but I'm going to quit, thinking that I could be more if only, if only. Man, there's no if only about it. I am what I am, and I thank God for it. So that old version of me, or my embracing that old definition of me, oh hell to the no.
Oh, that is a fabulous oh hell no moment. Yes. I love it. It was such a pleasure having you on the podcast and talking to you about your new book. Please tell us, when will this book be available? How can we keep up with all the things that you're doing? Give us your, social media handles or your website, whatever it is, so that we can stay connected.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. So the book will be out in January of 2020, and it'll be on Amazon. Okay. The EQ Intervention. And my last name is kind of funny. My first name is Adam, is like Adam and Eve, but my last name is Saenz. It's a Spanish surname, and it's spelled S as in Sam, A as in apple, E as in elephant, N as in Nancy, and Z as in zebra. Saenz. And so if you go on to Amazon, I think it's due for release January 20th. And just enter my name, Adam Saenz, the EQ Intervention, it'll pop up. You can also go to my website, is adamsaenz.com, ADAMSAENZ.com. And you can find out more information about my workshops and about the work I'm doing in my clinic and at the university, and the personality test that I've developed that I use with my clients for EQ coaching. So many fun things going on.
That is fabulous. Thank you so much, Adam. Dr. Saenz.
You're so welcome. It's been such a pleasure to visit with you. I appreciate your interest in the topic, and I'm just honored to share the time with you.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show.